Morning, everybody. It's July the 13th, and I was just doing a giant Marconi pepper plant update. I planted these peppers May the 2nd. I've got a video in my playlist of how I planted them and what fertilizers I've used. This is the first time I've ever planted peppers over here on this side of the house. And when we planted them, they took off and was doing really well, and they started growing a bunch of peppers at the base of the plant. And these peppers were, when they got about 8 to 10 inches long, they were growing down in the dirt. I had to get some 6x6 ceramic tiles out and lay on the ground to try to keep them up out of the dirt. I lost 2 of them to the tips rotting and laying in the dirt. So I just pulled all the green peppers off the bottom. They didn't even get a chance to get red. And we cut them up and vacuum sealed them, and they're in the freezer. They're actually pretty good. As far as a green pepper goes, this plant makes a really good, delicious green pepper, but I'm after them to get big and get red. And we've had a really dry season this year. And we've had a really hot season this year. We've broken records with the heat, and we've broken records with the drought. And the drought I can remedy by watering, but the heat, I can't do anything about that. And what I've noticed with the heat this year, we had several weeks, we're well under our rainfall for the year, and we had several weeks of mid-90s, and we even broke a record at 99, which is unheard of for central Indiana until you get into like August. And what I noticed when I come out here to water, just giving you some shots of the peppers, what I noticed when I come out here to water these things, when we hit those 2 weeks of high 90s, is the plants, I guess, were stressed from something, the heat I'm imagining, and we had bloom drop. All the blooms dropped off the top of these plants, and for 2 weeks I didn't see any blooms on them. But now that the weather's cooled back down to the 80s, we're starting to get some blooms back in the top of the plants, which is good because these pepper plants produce a pepper so large that when they grow short, little bushy plants like this, I've got them ranging 2 foot tall to the tallest one. Let's see, that's a pretty tall one, but this one over here's the tallest. It's at 51 inches right now. So you can see the difference in this plant and this plant. They've all been fertilized the same. They've all been watered the same. It's just kind of strange how they're doing this year, and I don't know if it's the weather, the drought, the heat, the new spot that they're planted in. But we are just now finally starting to get some peppers back on these guys. Let's see if I can get down in. And every plant has peppers on it, but I'm noticing these taller plants, for some reason, have the least amount of peppers, and they suffered the most from bloom drop. But now we're finally getting some blooms back on them. So I don't know what's up with that. Like I say, it's all trial and error when you're planting in a new spot. I plant this variety pepper every year for probably, I'm gonna say it's been Probably going on 8 years. So I kind of know how they grow. And I knew they would outgrow these cages when I put the cages in, but that's all I had. And now with the cost of everything, these big cages like this thick gauge wire, you're looking at about $8 a cage for that. And so I just used the big ones I had and the small ones, and we'll just make do with what we got. And hopefully now that these blooms are staying on the plant and the heat has got back down to the 80s. Now look at that. Mr. Praying Mantis. I've been seeing baby praying mantises all over the plants this year. So we'll leave him alone. I take care of them. We have them every year. The tomato plants are going crazy too. It's hard to walk through here. But you can see every plant has peppers on it. And every plant's starting to get the blooms back on it. So that was worrying me. I actually thought, I told my wife that if they don't soon start putting some blooms back on them, I was just going to cut them down. And that was the 2 weeks of 95s and 99s we had with no rain. And now that the weather's got back down, and last week we finally got some rain here. Northern Indiana and southern Indiana has been getting a lot of rain. But central Indiana, like I say, we're basically starving for rain. And you can see here on my planter boxes how the soil, it's so dry. And this is potting mix. The soil's pulling away from the boxes. So I'm trying to get the water on these plants now that the blooms are coming back out and the peppers, it's setting blooms and the peppers are actually staying on the plant, not falling off. Every 3 to 4 days, I put 2 gallons of water on each plant. I think it was 4 days. The blackberries I'm doing every 3 days. So we're running through some water. We're going through some water. All my barrels have been emptied. With the rainstorm, we filled up 4 55-gallon barrels. And then I've got this IBC tote here that you can see my hose still laying on top of it. I pump the water from that downspout up there where that yellow bucket is. When it rains, I just pump it into there. This is a new trash can that's never been used. It was full of water till I watered. But everything's doing better now that the temperatures have gone back down, and we got a little rain last week, and that was the first rain we've got here in 2 weeks, so that's really bad. So just wanted to do a little pepper update. And even here at the top, the bad thing about having this giant Marconi producing peppers above the cage is I'm going to have to put a stake in the ground, because once they start putting these peppers on above the cage, these limbs are going to get heavy and they're going to bend over, and I've had them snap. My tallest pepper plant of this was over 5 foot on the other side of the house. It grew well above the cage, and the peppers grew at the top of the plant, and it got so heavy that it leaned over the cage and snapped the stalks. So as you can see, we've got a few peppers down low. It dropped all of the blooms. Well, there's one bloom left on there, but it dropped all of the blooms for 2 feet of this plant, and now it's starting to set the blooms again on top because the temperatures come down. So just a little update on these guys. And if you're growing this variety, just be aware that in the high temperatures you can suffer bloom drop. It's kind of normal. It happened on the other side of the house. My suggestion is keep them watered best you can, and pray for rain, and just stay on top of it with the watering, and with a little help from the Lord, we'll get a harvest, a good red peppers this year. Thanks for watching.